Welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we're actually stepping right into a microscopic war zone. Seriously, I want you to completely reimagine how you look at your brain, and specifically how you think about Alzheimer's disease. We're going to treat your brain as a high-stakes battlefield. You've got this relentless invader constantly trying to gain ground, and your body's nightly defenses are literally the only thing holding the line.
You know, for decades, we've thought of Alzheimer's as this sort of passive, static buildup of junk in the brain. Just plaques and tangles slowly accumulating over time. Kind of like rust on a car, right? But what if that's completely wrong? What if the proteins responsible for Alzheimer's actually behave like a highly infectious disease, spreading right there within your own neural networks?
To really grasp this, we have to talk about prions. Think of a prion as a zombie protein. It's a misfolded version of a normal protein, but it has this incredibly aggressive ability to spread. When a prion bumps into a healthy, normally folded copy of itself, it forces that healthy protein to misfold too. It's wild. And according to some really groundbreaking research out of UCSF, the two main culprits in Alzheimer's, amyloid beta and tau, well, they aren't just passive debris, they're actually acting as self-propagating prions. They are the active, aggressive invaders on our battlefield.
Part 1. A toxic chain reaction. So, how exactly do these invaders initiate their attack? Well, that all starts with a chain reaction that is surprisingly aggressive.
Just think about this number for a second. 32. Researchers made this completely startling discovery when they examined the brains of Alzheimer's patients who passed away at different ages. They found that the levels of these infectious tau prions were on average 32 times higher in patients who died at age 40 compared to those who died at 90. 32 times! It really highlights that early onset, genetically driven Alzheimer's isn't just, faster aging. It's driven by a highly concentrated, incredibly infectious form of these prion proteins rapidly propagating through the tissue.
Part 2. Hijacking neural highways. Okay, once these prions take hold, they're strategic. They actually use the brain's own anatomical infrastructure against it. Okay, let's dive into this. Tau pathology usually kicks off in a specific memory center called the entorhinal cortex. But of course, it doesn't just stay there. Because tau acts like a prion, it travels right down the axons of infected neurons, jumps across the synapse, and infects the next connected neuron. The whole thing spreads through the brain's networks exactly like falling dominoes, moving systematically from the memory centers straight outward into the temporal and parietal lobes. Part 3. The immune system betrayal. Now, every battlefield has a defense force, right? But here's where our story takes a genuinely tragic twist. This is the exact point where the brain's own initial defenders are inadvertently turned into traitors.
Meet the microglia. These little guys are the brain's resident immune cells. Under normal circumstances, they're your primary cleanup crew. Usually, they're the heroes, patrolling the brain, swallowing up dead cells and debris like microscopic Roombas. And naturally, when the toxic tau prions start showing up, the microglia are the very first responders on the scene. Let's move to and see how this builds. Based on some absolutely fascinating research from Dr. Sarah Hopp's lab, we now know that when microglia encounter tau prions, they enthusiastically swallow them up using a specific receptor called LRP1. Think of LRP1 as the microglial mouth. At first, this is awesome. They're clearing the battlefield. But there's a huge problem. These prions are incredibly tough. So as the microglia gorge themselves on tau, their internal recycling centers, the lysosomes, they just become completely overwhelmed and stressed out. The whole digestion process breaks down, and instead of destroying the tau, the microglia end up spitting out highly toxic, concentrated tau seeds right back into the brain. So the very cells meant to protect us become the exact vehicles amplifying and spreading the infection.
Part 4. The brain's nightly wash. So if the prions are hijacking our neural highways and our immune cells are failing us, how on earth do we survive? Well, the ultimate solution happens when we are completely unconscious.
There is this stark, honestly almost unbelievable physical difference between an awake brain and a sleeping brain. When you're awake, your brain is just bathed in noradrenaline. That's the arousal chemical. It keeps the brain tissue tightly packed and highly resistant to fluid flow. It's in a closed-off defensive state. But the moment you enter deep, slow-wave sleep, noradrenaline levels just plummet. The vascular tissue relaxes, the resistance drops, and the brain physically opens up to allow fluid to just flush right through it.
And how much does it open up? A massive 60%. Seriously! During deep sleep, the interstitial space,
that physical space between your brain cells, it actually expands by up to 60%. Your brain is quite literally opening up its internal drainage pipes.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens next. With those pipes wide open, cerebrospinal fluid just rushes into the brain tissue through these special water channels called AQP4. It mixes with the fluid already sitting in your brain, acting exactly like a microscopic washing machine. It actively scrubs the battlefield, washing away all those amyloid beta and tau prions that built up during the day and flushes them right out of the skull through meningeal lymphatic vessels. It's amazing, but here's the catch. If you don't get deep sleep, this washing machine simply never turns on. And those prions, they're just left there to spread.
Part 5, the future of prevention. Understanding this nightly wash, it changes absolutely everything we know about preventing this disease. It takes Alzheimer's out of the realm of this unavoidable, scary fate and places it squarely into the realm of actionable, daily biology.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the clearance rate comparison between humans and mice. This data reveals exactly why we humans are so incredibly vulnerable to Alzheimer's compared to other mammals. A mouse brain, it can clear amyloid beta at least 5 times faster than we can. The half-life of these toxins in a mouse brain is just an hour or two. But in a human brain, it takes 10 to 13 hours just to clear out half of the toxic burden. We cleared at this super sluggish rate of about 7% per hour. Our blood-brain barrier transport is just highly inefficient compared to a mouse. What this means is that humans rely almost entirely on that nightly glymphatic wash to survive. Missing even a little bit of deep sleep disproportionately harms the human brain.
But hey, here is the really exciting part. Now that science knows this washing machine exists, they're figuring out how to supercharge it. Researchers are developing all sorts of new interventions to deepen slow-wave sleep and enhance this clearance. We're looking at specific sleep medications like dual orexin receptor antagonists, things like daridorexant, which promote natural deep sleep without that awful grogginess you get from older sedatives. Then there are experimental drugs like ACX02, designed to artificially suppress noradrenaline and trigger the wash cycle directly. There's even non-invasive tech out there now. Closed-loop acoustic stimulation. These are headbands that play specific audio tones timed perfectly to your brainwaves to physically deepen your slow-wave sleep. And of course, there's simple CPAP therapy for sleep apnea, which restores the normal oxygen and pressure gradients your brain absolutely needs to drain its waste.
So the crucial point is really captured by UCSF's Dr. Carlo Condello. He asks, what if we just haven't been designing drugs against the distinctive prion forms of these proteins that actually cause the disease? For years, Alzheimer's drugs have failed in clinical trials, which led some to think, maybe we were targeting the wrong proteins entirely. But by reframing Alzheimer's as a double prion disorder, an active, spreading infection primarily fought off by the mechanical washing of deep sleep, we are opening up entirely new and highly hopeful avenues for prevention and treatment.
Which brings us to the most practical takeaway for you, right here, right now. Every single day, your brain produces these potentially dangerous proteins. It's just an unavoidable byproduct of being awake and thinking. The battlefield is set every single day. The only way to win the war is to call in the reinforcements at night. So I'll leave you with this question. Are you actually giving your brain the deep, uninterrupted, slow-wave sleep it desperately needs to wash away today's neurotoxins? Take a hard look at your sleep hygiene tonight because your brain's defense force is completely relying on it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.